We are live.
Hey, it's Friday. Welcome back for the one or two people that are watching this. If Lady Thistle's out there, big shout out. But it is Friday, John 7, the Game of Thrones. This is a really good chapter. I actually had to read it twice because there was a couple of things that the first previous times I've wait a minute, let me stop. I am old new dude, and he is
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son.
I get going, man. I just forget about everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to read it a couple of times. The first several times in the past that I read it, there was a lot that I missed, even on the fourth or fifth read through the book. And this time, for some reason, I guess since I am doing this with you, I don't want to come off like a complete idiot. So I try to look as closely as I can and as carefully as I can. And I still miss stuff because there's stuff that you'll throw down on yours, and I'd be like, "Damn, I didn't even think about that." But it's a really good chapter.
Yeah, it's a nice little story too, right? It goes from from getting the corpses that they've being led to the corpses by Ghost to which we saw him give the watch a hand last time, right? But anyway, he Ghost leads them to the corpses. They bring the corpses back. The attack, the saving them, right? I mean, it's kind of its own little story. But it's kind of a long story. I kind of forget that this is all one chapter. It almost feels like two different stories.
When I started the chapter, the first I read it yesterday. Then I read it again this morning. When I read it yesterday, for some reason I was thinking that this wasn't a two-parter of a chapter, that we only get to be that first part and
right.
That's what I'm saying. Turning the page. I'm like, oh crap, there's more. Oh yay.
It's because the concept of everybody knowing about getting the corpses, then everybody knowing about Jon and knowing about Ned, really, right? But knowing that the letter about Ned, and then Jon attacking, and then Jon getting arrested, Jon saving the Mormont. I mean, it's a lot going on, but it's all related, and it's all like one big story from beginning to end here. So I kind of like this chapter.
It's kind of like a ballet, a dance. The whole chapter is woven together quite well.
Or a three-act play, or whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing in a three-act play.
Anybody that has watched us knows that Richard is the brains of the operation. He will start out with what he saw in the chapter, and then I'll jump in with my stupid stuff. So, as usual, take it away, Richard.
All right, thank you, sir. Othor, announced Sir Jeremy Riker, beyond a doubt. And this one was Jafer Flowers. He turned the corpse over with his foot, and the dead white face stared up at the overcast sky with blue eyes. They were Ben Stark's men, both of them. Othor, much like other.
Hey, quick question. Do we think this is the same day that this is the very next day, isn't it? Because they said their vows.
I think they're still out there, right? I think that they haven't even come back. Like,
okay,
they came back briefly to get more forces, but potentially if these people weren't all with them on the way. But there's some of the same people are here.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out if it was. Did Jon and Sam say their vows closer to nightfall?
No, they do go back out, I think, right? No. This is the same people, right? They're still out there. Yeah, they're still there, I think.
All right. They just sent for the Lord Commander and.
This is where it would almost be helpful to be doing these more storyline by storyline read through kind of things, right? Like Close the Door podcast or the Girls Gone Canon podcast. Speaking of which, we're gonna be doing. I think we have a brand chapter next, and they just did that one. Anyway, the horses did not like the feel of this place. For that matter, neither did Jon. The dogs liked it least of all. Direwolves lack the caution of common animals, to paraphrase Illyrio on Kings.
Yep, direwolves are kings, that's for sure.
Yep. It's only a wood, Jon told himself, and they're only dead men. He'd seen dead men before. Last night he had dreamt the Winterfell dream again. He was wandering the empty castle, searching for his father, descending into the crypts. Only this time, the dream had gone further than before. In the dark, he had heard the scrape of stone on stone. When he turned, he saw that the vaults were opening, one after the other. As the dead kings came stumbling from their cold black graves, Jon had woken in pitch dark, his heart hammering. Even when Ghost leapt up on the bed to nuzzle at his face, he could not shake his deep sense of terror. He dared not go back to sleep. Instead, he climbed the wall and walked, restless, till he saw the light of the dawn off to the east. It was only a dream. I'm a brother of the Night's Watch now, not a frightened boy. Samwell Tarly huddled beneath the trees, half hidden behind the horses. His round, fat face was the color of curdled milk. So far, he had not lurched off to the woods to retch, but he had not so much as glanced at the dead men either. I can't look, he whispered miserably. You have to look, Jon told him, keeping his voice low so the others would not hear. Maester Aemon sent you to be his eyes, didn't he? What good are eyes if they're shut? Yes, but I'm such a coward, Jon. Jon put a hand on Sam's shoulder. We have a dozen rangers with us, and the dogs, even Ghost. No one will hurt you, Sam. Go ahead and look. The first look is the hardest. Sam gave a tremulous nod, working up his courage with a visible effort. Slowly, he swiveled his head. His eyes widened, but Jon held his arm so he could not turn away. He had seen dead men before, Jon reminds himself, and therefore the reader, of Jon telling his brother not to look away. Bran learned when a man can be brave, and Sam announces his similar opportunity. Jon has seen dead men in his days at Winterfell, but he immediately associates his time at Winterfell with the dead walking. We can speculate on the long-term foreshadowing, but we don't have to wait long for the shorter term.
Yeah. Well, another thing on that, I get the sense that the dream is prolific a little bit. You got an empty Winterfell, which that's going to happen.
Prophetic?
Yeah, prophetic. What did I say?
I'm prolific, but I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got an empty Winterfell, which will happen. The dead kings of the past coming to life is foreshadowed throughout the damn book.
Oh yeah.
So that might come to happen. He's looking for his father, and he goes to the crypts. So if he's looking for his father and he goes to the crypts, that's kind of like Bran and Rickon going to the empty crypt when they had the dream about their father.
Right.
So there might be a little bit more going on in the dream he had that night before.
Yeah.
Prolific. I'm an idiot, man. I swear.
Sansa's correct. Everyone knows dreams are prophetic, or at least all the fans, all of our fandom knows that.
Yeah.
Ben Stark had 6 men with him when he rode from the wall. Where are the others? I'm sure the others will get here eventually, one way or more likely the other. Since Benjen was lost, we stayed closer to the wall than we were wont to do before, by your own command. The old bear grunted. Yes, well, be that as it may, he made an impatient gesture. Tell me how they died. he got caught out on his own BS there. He was going off on Riker, and Riker's like,
Well, I mean, you got to stop and think about this. Also, if he hadn't had brought the Rangers closer in, these bodies would have been discovered before.
Right, they wouldn't have been able to dump them that close anyway. Yeah.
Right. So that decision to say, "Hey, you Rangers come back in," is still more evidence.
That's what about. It's like, how could this happen? Why? How are they this close and you didn't even notice them? Right? And Riker's like, because you told me not to look.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mormont not remembering that I told you to come back in and looking like a complete idiot just there is and
that happens all the time, right? That happens all the time with the management, is that management gets upset with the line employees for actually doing what management wanted, right? Like, we knew that we should be doing this. We told you we should be doing this. You wouldn't let us do this.
This is true.
Pretty typical. Squatting beside the dead man he had named Jafer Flowers, Sir Jeremy grasped his head by the scalp. The hair came out between his fingers, brittle as straw. The knight cursed and shoved at the face with the heel of his hand. A great gash in the side of the corpse's neck opened like a mouth, crusted with dried blood. Only a few ropes of pale tendon still attached the head to the neck. This was done with an axe. Aye, muttered Dywin, the old forester. Be like the axe that Othor carried, my lord. Jon could feel his breakfast churning in his belly, but he pressed his lips together and made himself look at the second body. Othor had been a big, ugly man, and he made a big, ugly corpse. No axe was in evidence. Jon remembered Othor. He had been the one bellowing the bawdy song as the Rangers rode out. His singing days were done. His flesh was blanched white as milk, everywhere but his hands. His hands were black like Jaefer's. Blossoms of hard, cracked blood decorated the mortal wounds that covered him like a rash, breast and groin and throat. Yet his eyes were still open. They stared up at the sky, blue as sapphires. Black hands, blue as sapphire eyes, a hand injury, two throats, the breast groin injury we recently discussed in Eddard's future chapter. All the symbolism hints are here.
Yeah.
In fact, the fact that he even describes the cut throat as looking like a red smile, essentially, right? He talks about how it looks like a mouth, a bloody mouth, right?
Yeah.
We get the weird thing out of there.
It's also odd that we automatically get. Well, Othor carries an axe, which I've never given a whole lot of. I want Benjen Stark to be alive, so I haven't looked at. Maybe these guys were set upon by the others out there. And if they had one die on him, and it's that one guy that has the head barely on, and he came back to life and was attacking the living, then Othor would have chopped him with his axe. So that image kind of just popped in my head.
Yeah, the fact that they could be killing each other because one of them died first. Yeah, it makes sense.
Right. And then you see that the Othor, he's set upon like zombie undead people. I mean, they just eat the living kind of thing. He's been gnawed at on his neck, his groin, the chest wound. I'm thinking that I don't know if this guy that's head's barely hanging on did all that, or just another dead person did that to Othor.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously not clear, but as we said, these books are intended to be ambiguous, where the author is leaving himself options. He wants you to interpret them different ways. What one interpretation being correct doesn't mean another interpretation is not correct. If the author confirms one interpretation is correct, that doesn't mean another interpretation is not correct. Hence the emphasis of J-shirt. But anyway.
Lady Thistle. I gave you a shout out at the very beginning.
Yeah. So she's our most reliable audience member.
Yeah.
With apologies to like the Valankar and all the rest of the people that comment and things. We do appreciate all of you.
Yeah.
We joke about both, but we know there's a few out there.
Yeah, we appreciate it too.
Yep. So where were we? Okay. So you believe this is Mance Rayder's work? This close to the wall? Who else, my lord? Jon could have told him. He knew. They all knew. Yet no man of them would say the words. The others are only a story, a tale to make children shiver. If they ever lived at all, they are gone 8,000 years. Even the thought made him feel foolish. He was a man grown now, a black brother of the Night's Watch, not the boy who'd once sat at old Nan's feet with Bran and Robb and Arya. Maybe you do know something, Jon.
Yeah, I still don't like that. Jon's thinking that he's new to the wall. These other guys should be saying it left and right of what's going on, especially some of the, maybe not Mormont, but some of the older, been on the wall longer, brothers of the Night's Watch. They shouldn't be keeping their mouth shut on the subject.
We'll get there as they'll want him burned, and Dywin will once again smell mislike the smell and so forth, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
The corpses are still fresh. These men cannot have been dead more than a day. No, Samwell Tarly squeaked. And then, my lord, it can't be a day or, look, the blood. Yes, Mormont growled impatiently. Blood, what of it? You can see where Ghost, Jon's direwolf, you can see where he tore off that man's hand, and yet the stump hasn't bled. Look. This man, look at the wrist. It's all crusty, dry. Like, Jon saw at once what Sam meant. He could see the torn veins in the dead man's wrist, iron worms in the pale flesh. His blood was a black dust. Yet Jeremy Riker was unconvinced. If they'd been dead much longer than a day, they'd be right by now, boy. They don't even smell. Dywin, the gnarled old forester who liked to boast that he could smell snow coming on, sidled closer to the corpses and took a whiff. Well, there are no pansy flowers, but the Lord has the truth of it. There's no corpse stink. They aren't rotting, Sam pointed, his fat fingers shaking only a little. Look, there's no maggots or worms or anything. They've been lying here in the woods, but they haven't been chewed or eaten by animals. Only ghosts. Otherwise, they're untouched, Jon said softly. And ghost is different. The dogs and the horses won't go near them. The rangers exchanged glances. They could see it was true, every man of them. And then, this is all wrong, Sam Tarley said earnestly. The blood. There's bloodstains on their clothes and their flesh, dry and hard, but there's none on the ground or anywhere. With those, Sam made himself swallow, took a deep breath. With those wounds, terrible wounds, there should be blood all over, shouldn't there? Dywin sucked at his wooden teeth. Might be they didn't die here. Might be someone brought them and left them for us. A warning is like. The old forester peered down suspiciously. And might be I'm a fool, but I don't know that Othor never had no blue eyes afore. Sir Jeremy looked startled. Neither did Flowers, he blurted, turning to stare at the dead man. A silence fell over the wood. For a moment, all they heard was Sam's heavy breathing and the wet sound of Dywin sucking on his teeth. Jon squatted beside Ghost. Burn them, someone whispered. One of the rangers, Jon could not have said who. Yes, burn them, a second voice urged. The old bear gave a stubborn shake of his head. Not yet. I want Mr. Aemon to have a look at them. We'll bring them back to the wall. Dire wolves lack caution, and so does the Lord Commander.
Yeah.
The old men called this weather spirit summer and said it meant the season was giving up its ghosts at last. After this, the cold would come, they warned, and a long summer always meant a long winter. This summer had lasted 10 years. Jon had been a babe in arms when it began. Ghost ran with him for a time and then vanished among the trees. Without the direwolf, Jon felt almost naked. He found himself glancing at every shadow with unease. Unbidden, he thought back on the tales that old Nan used to tell them when he was a boy at Winterfell. He could almost hear her voice again, the click, click, click of her needles. In that darkness, the others came riding, she used to say, dropping her voice lower and lower. Cold and dead they were, and they hated iron and fire and the touch of the sun and every living creature with hot blood in its veins. Hold fast, and cities and kingdoms of men all fell before them as they moved south on pale dead horses, leading hosts of the slain. They fed their dead servants on the flesh of human children. When he caught his first glimpse of the wall looming above the tops of an ancient gnarled oak, Jon was vastly relieved. So Jon feeling naked reminds me of Tyrion's first chapter. Something about the howling of a wolf took a man right out of his here and now and left him in a dark forest of the mind, running naked before the pack.
Yeah.
When we got that, I kept thinking that there were things that it should tie to, and I think we found one or two at the time, but this wasn't one.
Yeah.
I was a ranger for one day at least. Whatever may come, they cannot take that away from me. Jon will go on the great ranging, but only because the dominoes fall in this chapter, which is, as Casey has pointed out, is sort of the whole key and part perhaps why Bran is urged not to bring Ned back. That we've talked about how if this is a sort of a chess game and people making and unmaking moves, that one of those moves is likely to be Bran saving Ned and realizing that's a losing variation.
Yeah. Something else too. The what do they call it? The spirited spring, or
they'll be called this weather spirit summer.
Right. Could that be another reason why the dead are laying there because it's too warm? They get brought in, and
so from the
next time we see them, it gets colder.
Well, from the prologue, what I've always wondered is they may have literally been walking, and when the sun comes up, they lose all their magic and they just fall down.
Okay,
right. That's my take from the prologue. Right, is in the prologue, it sure feels like what's going on there is they're able to walk when the sun is down, but as soon as the sun comes up, the magic is gone and they collapse. Right.
Well, that would put a nail in the coffin on this being the exact same day that Ghost found them and they were taking their vows. because if not, they'd have got up and walked away or walked even closer.
Yeah, no, you're right, because that was supposed to be, they were supposed to be approaching nightfall, or maybe that. Yeah, unless it was, they were just being a little cautious to try and get back before nightfall. And anyway, I mean, I'd have to go back and look at the end of the last John chapter.
Yeah,
but I think it's supposed to be after that, though. I mean, it really is the same people that were there, right? It's
right.
It's the three leaders of the different. Right, we even have the same guy who smelled, who commented about how he could smell the bad smell in the previous chapter.
Right. Well, I mean, if it was approaching evening fall when they did their vows and they went home to Castle Black after the hand, Jon had the dream about going into the crypts when he's looking for his father, like Bran and Rickon, then came back. Then if those bodies did not get up and go somewhere else, then whoever had them walk there wanted them to be found.
Yeah, and maybe they did have to make camp out there, right? Because and maybe they didn't come upon these people until the day. Right? Maybe it is the next day, because I was a ranger for one day.
Right.
Right. That's not like I just went out to the Godswood and came back to the nearest Godswood and came back. It's like that. No. That means that sort of implies they camped out there, right? That they actually took a while to find this place.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
They went ranging looking for the bodies. So I mean that counts.
I think he's out for 24 hours. I think that's the implication there, right?
I guess.
Yeah. Anyway.
Seriously.
Okay. Seriously. Marsh glanced at Jon before he answered. Maester Aemon has the letter. He's waiting in your solar. Very well. Jon, seat my horse, and tell Sir Jeremy to put the dead men in a storeroom until the Maester is ready for them. And then a bit later, Jon was uncomfortably aware that people were watching him. Sir Alistair Thorne was drilling his boys in the yard, but he broke off to stare at Jon, a faint half smile on his lips. One-armed Donal Loy stood in the door of the armory. The gods be with you, Snow, he called out. Something's wrong, Jon thought. Something's very wrong. The dead men were carried to one of the storerooms along the base of the wall. Dark, cold cell chiseled from the ice and used to keep meat and grain and sometimes even beer. And then a bit later, bring me a cup of wine and pour one for yourself. For myself, my lord? Mormont lifted his eyes from the letter to stare at Jon. There was pity in that look. He could taste it. You heard me. Jon poured with exaggerated care, vaguely aware that he was drawing out the act. When the cups were filled, he would have no choice but to face whatever was in that letter. Yet all too soon they were filled. Sit, boy, Mormont commanded him. Drink. Your Lord Commander commands it. This really fits all the king commands it scenarios we reviewed previously. Right? It's the right-handed guy. It's his right-hand man that he's commanding to drink. We talked about how that's the case in all those different examples, right?
Yeah.
The things we love destroy us every time, lad. Remember that. My son loved that young wife of his, vain woman. If not for her, he would never have thought to sell those poachers.
Can I stop you right there?
What's that?
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
For just a second. That is the most important sentence in this entire chapter and possibly the entire first book. Remember what I told you with Peter Baelish? Once you know what a heart desires, you know how to move them.
Right.
Well, this is telling you that your heart's desire is what gets you destroyed playing this game. In my mind, I mean, it just jumped out at me.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. The things we love destroy us every time, right? You're saying having motivation allows you to be manipulated. That's your point, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what got
That's really a very important point.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to the love is the bane of duty, death of honor thing, right? It's
right.
We talked about that in our previous live stream, which is in the future in the books. Right? We jumped ahead to cover Ned's last chapter with the Green Bard.
Yeah, that was awesome.
We talked about
after it was over with and you had already logged off. He had thrown it out there that he would be willing to. I mean, in the future, when we get to a really, really good chapter, to reach out, and he'd be more than willing to jump back on and do a big chapter with us again.
Sounds good.
Okay.
If not for her, he would never have thought to sell those poachers. Jon, and we've also talked before about how his actions position both him and Liness, and they're actually both potentially important
Yes.
to the story.
Yes.
Of course, Mormont's obviously more of a central character, but we haven't yet seen Liness's brother go to Liness for her to help him raise a fleet, so it could be important. Anyway, it sounds kind of important. Anyway, Jon could scarcely follow what he was saying. My lord, I don't understand. What's happened to my father? I told you to sit, Mormont grumbled. Sit, the raven screamed. And have a drink, damn you. That's a command, Snow. Jon sat and took a sip of wine. Lord Eddard has been imprisoned. He's charged with treason. It is said he plotted with Robert's brothers to deny the throne to Prince Joffrey. No, Jon said at once. That couldn't be. My father would never betray the king. Be that as it may, said Mormont. It is not for me to say, nor for you. But it's a lie, Jon insisted. How could they think his father was a traitor? Had they all gone mad? Lord Eddard Stark would never dishonor himself. Would he? He fathered a bastard, a small voice whispered inside him. Where was the honor in that? And your mother, what of her? You will not even speak her name. My lord, what will happen to him? Will they kill him? As to that, I cannot say, lad. I mean to send a letter. I knew some of the king's counselors in my youth, old Pycelle, Lord Stannis, Sir Barristan. Whatever your father has done or hasn't done, he's a great lord. He must be allowed to take the black and join us here. God knows we need men of Lord Eddard's ability. Jon knew that other men accused of treason had been allowed to redeem their honor on the wall in days past. Why not Lord Eddard? His father here? That was a strange thought, and strangely uncomfortable. It would be a monstrous injustice to strip him of Winterfell and force him to take the black. And yet if it meant his life, then would Joffrey allow it? He remembered the prince at Winterfell, the way he'd mocked Robb and Sir Roderick in the yard. Jon himself he had scarcely even noticed. Bastards were beneath even his contempt. My lord, will the king listen to you? The old bear shrugged. A boy king? I imagine he'll listen to his mother. A pity the dwarf isn't with him. He's the lad's uncle, and he saw our need when he visited us. It was a bad thing your lady mother taking him captive. Lady Stark is not my mother, Jon reminded him sharply. Tyrion Lannister had been a friend to him. If Lord Eddard was killed, she would be as much to blame as the queen. My lord, what of my sisters, Arya and Sansa? They're with my father, do you know? Pycelle makes no mention of them, but doubtless will be treated gently. I will ask about them when I write. Mormont shook his head. This could not have happened at a worse time. If ever the realm needed a strong king, there are dark days and cold nights ahead. I feel it in my bones. Gave Jon a long, shrewd look. Hope you're not thinking of doing anything stupid, boy. He's my father, Jon wanted to say, but he knew that Mormont would not want to hear it. His throat was dry. He made himself take another sip of wine. Your duty is here now, the Lord Commander reminded him. Your old life ended when you took the black. His bird made a raucous echo. Black! Mormont took no notice. Whatever they do in King's Landing is none of our concern. When Jon did not answer, the old man finished his wine and said, You're free to go. I'll have no further need of you today. On the morrow, you can help me write that letter. Jon did not remember standing or leaving the solar. The next he knew, he was descending the tower steps, thinking, This is my father, my sisters. How could it be none of my concern? Outside, one of the guards looked at him and said, Be strong, boy. The gods are cruel. They know, Jon realized. My father is no traitor, he said hoarsely. Even the words stuck in his throat, as if to choke him. The wind was rising, and it seemed colder in the yard than it had when he'd gone in. Spirit summer was drawing to an end. The rest of the afternoon passed as if in a dream. Jon could not have said where he walked, what he did, who he spoke with. Ghost was with him, he knew that much. The silent presence of the direwolf gave him comfort. The girls did not even have that much, he thought. Their wolves might have kept them safe, but Lady is dead and Amira is lost. They're all alone. So we have a whole lot of Preston's lost time here, perhaps symbolizing hidden fingers at work.
Yeah. The phrase at the very, well, not the very beginning, but the what is it? When he says that, but it's a lie, didn't you? Yeah. Would he dishonor himself or something like that? And then he fathered a bastard. A small voice whispered inside him. The small voice that whispered inside of him is not him.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before. That when you see the voices whispering inside them, that can indicate that. Yeah, makes sense. And we certainly know that that's how. One of the ways that the gods mess with the timeline, and that Arya's was particularly blatant, but we do. This is not the first time you've pointed out. Hey, there's a voice inside them that's not them talking to them.
Well, I mean, just stop and think of the timing of this. The very next day after John took his vows, they get this
Oh yeah.
the word about
Yep.
Eddard. And if it had happened a day before or 2 days before that, John wouldn't have took the black.
Right.
So it happened a day. They got the letter a day after John took the black.
Yep. Yep.
If that didn't happen that way, then
Yep.
everything from this point forward wouldn't be the way it's supposed to be.
Yep. Yep. You're right. And then he heard the laughter, sharp and cruel as a whip, and the voice of Sir Alistair Thorne. Not only a bastard, but a traitor's bastard, he was telling the men around him. In the blink of an eye, John had vaulted onto the table, dagger in his hand. Pitt made a grab for him, but he wrenched his leg away, and then he was sprinting down the table and kicking the bowl from Sir Alistair's hand. Stew went flying everywhere, spattering the brothers. Thorne recoiled. People were shouting, but Jon Snow did not hear them. He lunged at Sir Alistair's face with the dagger, slashing at those cold onyx eyes. But Sam threw himself between them, and before Jon could get around him, Pip was on his back, clinging like a monkey, and Gren was grabbing his arm while Toad wrenched the knife from his fingers. Later, much later, after they had marched him back to his sleeping cell, Mormont came down to see him, Raven on his shoulder. I told you not to do anything stupid, boy, the old bear said. Boy, the bird chorused. Mormont shook his head, disgusted. And to think I had high hopes for you. They took his knife and his sword and told him he was not to leave his cell until the high officers met to decide what was to be done with him. Then they placed a guard outside his door to make certain he obeyed. His friends were not allowed to see him, but the old bear did relent and permit him ghost, so he was not utterly alone. So Jon did not hear more hidden. This is, more of the hidden figures, butterfly effect, quantum leap symbolism.
Yes. Well, let's stop and think. Shout out to Sam, who beat him to Sir Alistair Thorne.
That struck me on that read too. He put himself between Jon and Alistair and threw himself in where a knife is going from one man to another. It's pretty freaking brave move.
Yeah, well, let's stop and play that out for a second. All right, Jon is running down the table. There's no obstruction. There's no people in his way running down that table, and he gets out of pit real quick. So he's running down that table with no obstruction, and then Sam's off a bench, and people are, I guess, lurching, falling back, whatever. Sam has to go around all them little dudes and get in between Sir Alistair and Jon. I mean, I think Sam had a little bit of help on that. Yeah,
or happened to be sitting closer to, halfway in between or something to get a head start.
Well, I mean, Sam puts his hand on his shoulder and tells him that we can go pray in the God's wood or whatever. So Sam's right there with Jon. So it was a shout out for Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. Jon slumped against the wall, hands around his knees, and stared at the candle on the table beside his narrow bed. So that sure reminds me of a glass candle.
Is that the little nod that maybe this is glass candle work being done? But
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It sure reminds me of that. It at least symbolizes like a glass candle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The flame flickered and swayed. The shadows moved around him. The room seemed to grow darker and colder. I will not sleep tonight, Jon thought. Yet he must have dozed. When he woke, his legs were stiff and cramped, and the candle had long since burned out. So we got some more lost time here.
Yes.
And I do think sometimes the lost time is just people falling asleep, but I don't know. When had it gotten so cold? Go ahead.
Well, at this point here, because you stop and think, if Jon was awake, he would have heard the ruckus right outside his door.
Yeah.
It's too soon for him to go out of that room.
Or there was intervention there to make him not notice, right? One or the other.
Right.
When had it gotten so cold? Ghost backed away from the door. There were deep gouges where he'd raked the wood. Jon slept through him raking the wood there.
Right. Yeah, he had a little help.
Jon watched him with mounting disquiet. There's someone out there, isn't there? He whispered. Crouching, the dwarf crept backward, white fur rising on the back of his neck. The guard, he thought. He left a man to guard my door. Ghost smells one through the door. That's all it is. Slowly, Jon pushed himself to his feet. He was shivering uncontrollably, wishing he still had a sword. 3 quick steps brought him to the door. He grabbed the handle and pulled it inward. The creak of the hinges almost made him jump. His guard was sprawled bonelessly across the narrow steps, looking up at him even though he was lying on his stomach. His head had been twisted completely around. I think this head twisting occurs a few times, so we need to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Beneath the hood, its eyes shone like an icy blue radiance. Ghost leapt. Man and wolf went down together with neither scream nor snarl, rolling, smashing into a chair, knocking over a table laden with papers. Mormont's raven was flapping overhead, screaming, "Corn, corn, corn, corn!" Jon felt as blind as Maester Aemon. And a bit later, moonlight flooded the solar. He glimpsed black hands buried in white fur, swollen dark fingers tightening around his direwolf's throat. And then a bit later, the hooded man lifted his pale moon face, and Jon slashed at it without hesitation. The sword laid the intruder open to the bone, taking off half his nose and opened a gash cheek to cheek under those eyes like blue stars burning. Jon knew that face. Othor, he thought, reeling back. Gods, he's dead! He's dead! I saw him dead! And then a bit later, burn, the raven cawed. Burn, burn, burn! Spinning, Jon saw the drapes he'd ripped from the window. He flung the lamp into the puddled cloth with both hands. Metal crunched, glass shattered, oil spewed, and the hangings went up in a great whoosh of flame. The heat of it on his face was sweeter than any kiss Jon had ever known. Ghost, he shouted. The direwolf wrenched free and came to him as the white struggled to rise, dark snake spilling from the great wound in its belly. Jon plunged his hand in the flames, grabbed a fistful of the burning drapes, and whipped them at the dead man. Let it burn, he prayed as the cloth smothered the corpse. Gods, please, please, let it burn. That's the end of the chapter.
No lie, even though I've already read it yesterday, I read it again this morning. Just this chapter alone, you know what's happening, but I'm still sitting on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
Catch the three eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't that happen both times too? Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go back up, did they say that when they were talking about blue, or maybe it was just blue eyes? Oh, it's blue eyes.
He says eyes 3 times.
Right. The first time it says blue eyes at the very beginning of the chapter, and this time it said eyes. Yeah, this time it's 3 eyes. Yeah, and of course 3 eyes represents opening your third eye and so forth, right?
Right. I got goosebumps, man.
Yeah. It's a pretty good chapter.
It's a very, very good chapter. Well, it even says, the Raven. I just saw on there it said burn, burn, burn. Like the Raven said it 3 times, but he said it 4. A smart Raven.
Yeah, it's actually 4. Yep.
I mean, I was like Order of Green Hand. I forget who it was, but anyone that says that Raven's touched or somebody's using that Raven as a guide is definitely correct. Props to someone else is because
somebody else had pointed that out to her. She's saying,
yeah. Well, I mean, there's not too many things that somebody else hasn't said. Most of the stuff that 70, 80% of
right. We come up with these things, and I'm sure almost any comment we make is something somebody's made somewhere before, right? I mean, there's so many forum posts.
I still like to remember who I heard it from so I can give them a name. I want to say I heard it from Order of the Green Hand. But it could be.
Everybody's been on the Raven being special. I mean, Preston's been on that for a long time. Everybody's on that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of cheating in that they don't actually make the Raven speak intelligent sentences. It just does like one word at a time and so forth. It's sort of plausible deniability by whoever's doing the manipulation. They're trying not to be obvious that they're intervening, right?
Well, if you notice, as we go along, the Raven will be.
BC. I'm trying to think what BC was book club. Okay, so props to someone else in book club for that. So when they went through this chapter in book club, they pointed out the 3 eyes, right, and 3 eyes being symbolic of opening your third eye and so forth.
Okay. I know we got book club tonight, Lady Thistle. Do you know what chapters we're doing? I'll give you a second to hopefully know. If not, I'll have to look it up. No problem. I was going to say something now. I can't remember what I was going to say. but yeah, I mean, just the timing of this, it all had to take place exactly how it happened. Jon had to lose time in the cell to be able to come out of the cell, get to the Lord
Timing.
Commander's. I guess you'd call it the Lord Commander's
Yeah,
receiving room.
if he comes out too early, then the guard's just going to stop him, right? So there really is a timing issue. You gotta keep him occupied. Your chapters are class 16 to 18, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Lady Fizzle. But yeah, I mean, because you got to stop and think about it. I mean, Uthor's a big guy. You got the guard outside the door. You got all that ruckus of Uthor killing that guard. Because I promise you, the guard's not going to sit there and look at the door. The guard's leaning on that door probably, or he's at the top of the stairs. And so you got the ruckus of Uthor snapping his neck, the fall from the top of the stairs all the way to the bottom. Ghost going crazy on that door. Granted, ghosts don't make a noise, but you should be able to hear every claw, every tooth, every fang on that door.
Right. Yeah, you make a lot of noise when you're
like, Jon's like slowly coming into consciousness. Huh?
Yeah, dog clawing in a door would make a lot of noise. Yes.
Yeah. So I definitely think. I mean, chances are, I mean, he had to have some help to not hear all that. So, and then you got the Raven telling them burn, burn, burn. I mean, it's just, man, I love this chapter. I mean, I don't know if I got goosebumps last Sunday with the Green Bard on the Ed Art chapter, but this one here, man, it's just so much going on. So much has to happen. So many hidden finger possibilities. So much lost time. I mean, and you stop and think about it. Also, you got the dead bodies, right? No other animals want to go anywhere near it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I could understand the dog and the horse and the scent and all that kind of stuff. Crows haven't even eaten their eyes, so crows know to stay away from these dead bodies.
Yep.
So it's sending out this vibe that says "Leave me the hell alone," and all these animals are. You got regular wolves running through the forest, ain't messing with it. The crows aren't eating their eyeballs out. There's no flying overhead waiting for it to stop and move, buzzard type going on. I mean, there's a lot of magic going on in this chapter. It's just freaking awesome.
Animals run from the ice zombies, but dire wolves are here to fight them.
Right. And then we're told that the dire wolves will outlive everybody. So, man, that was an awesome chapter. I get so excited doing these things. You not being able to do it Wednesday at 12 until 12:30, which puts me into
this chapter was too important to I appreciate that when you said, "No, let's just do it Friday." I was like, "Yeah, this chapter's got so many long quotes in it, right?" I had to keep going, and then later, and then later, and then later, because I had to abbreviate these things because I was just going to be reading this whole very long chapter. I didn't keep doing that.
Yeah, it was a good chapter though. And you're right, Bran is next.
Yep, and it's his penultimate chapter, and the Order Greenhand did it, or not the Order Greenhand. Girls Gone Canon did that a few weeks ago, about like 2 weeks ago, something like that.
I'm writing down chapters 16 through 18 on. I don't have any nephews that are spending the night. My wife had a day off yesterday, and then she'll be off tomorrow, so I should be able to jump on, no problem. Because I like book club just as much as I like doing these here, but I don't always get to do it. But I can't wait. But yes, the next chapter is going to be Bran, probably Monday or Wednesday next week.
Yep.
Okay. As always, on a Friday, we like to wish everyone to have a safe and enjoyable weekend. Just take care of yourself. Yes.
Pumps for book club.
I need to do some push-ups for Ice and FireCon because I'm looking kind of flabby. But everybody have a great weekend. There is some more children getting sicker right now with there's two different things, the regular flu and something else. So please take care of your little ones.
Letters, but
you can't win for losing nowadays. But all right, we will see you either next Wednesday or Monday, and everybody have a great weekend. I have been Old New Dude. He has been
Richard York, Asher's True Born Son.
It has been a blast, and have a good day. Bye.